There is a silence that feels empty, and then there is a silence that feels powerful. Most people cannot tell the difference. When they see a woman walking alone, sitting alone, eating alone, living quietly, they immediately label her. She must be lonely. She must be difficult. Something must be wrong with her. There is a kind of silence that feels heavy, and then there is a kind of silence that feels safe. Most people only recognize the first one. They see a woman sitting alone, walking alone, living quietly, and they quickly decide what her life must look like. They assume her heart is empty, that her world is small, that something is missing. But silence does not always mean absence. Sometimes it means understanding. Many women do not become alone suddenly. It happens slowly, after many conversations where they were not heard, many relationships where they were present but not valued, many moments where they gave more than they received. At first, they try harder. They explain themselves, they adjust, they forgive again and again, hoping that kindness will be enough to change people. But life has a gentle way of teaching a difficult lesson. You cannot build deep connections with people who only understand you on the surface. So one day, without anger and without drama, she steps back, not because she hates people, but because she finally loves her peace. She realizes that laughter forced in the wrong company is more exhausting than silence in the right space. She learns that being surrounded by many people does not protect the heart from loneliness, and that sometimes a crowded room can feel emptier than a quiet one. In her solitude, she begins to hear her own thoughts clearly. She notices how her breathing slows down, how her mind becomes less restless, how her heart no longer prepares itself for disappointment before every conversation. She starts enjoying small moments, the warmth of morning light, the taste of tea, the calm of walking without explaining where she is going or why. These moments may look ordinary from outside, but inside they rebuild something important, trust in herself. People misunderstand this change. They call her distant. They say she has become cold. They think pride has replaced kindness. But what they do not see is that boundaries are not walls, they are doors with locks. They exist not to keep everyone out, but to allow only those who know how to respect what is inside. There are nights when loneliness still visits her. She feels it quietly, like a soft ache rather than a loud pain. She allows it to come, and she allows it to go, because she knows now that emotions are visitors, not permanent residents. She no longer runs from them or lets them decide her worth. And slowly, something beautiful happens. She stops needing to prove her value. She stops shrinking to fit into conversations that make her feel small. She stops begging for space in lives that never had room for her. She stands gently but firmly in her own presence. When new people eventually enter her life, they find not a desperate heart, but a steady one. They meet a woman who knows how to listen, but also how to walk away. Who knows how to love, but also how to protect herself. Who understands that companionship is precious only when it is peaceful. So if you ever meet a woman with no friends, do not measure her life by the number of voices around her. Measure it by the calm in her eyes, the steadiness in her choices, and the quiet strength in the way she carries herself. Some people are not alone because they failed to connect. They are alone because they finally learned not to lose themselves. There is a quiet strength in being alone that many fail to notice. People see a woman without friends and immediately assume there is something lacking in her life. They think she must feel incomplete, or that she is missing love, or that she is somehow broken. But the truth is often the opposite. Sometimes a woman without friends has learned a lesson that only solitude can teach, the lesson of knowing her own worth. She has been through seasons of giving more than she received, of speaking and not being heard, of trusting and discovering that not everyone who smiles at her heart truly wishes her well. It is not bitterness that leads her to solitude, but clarity. She has realized that the wrong companionship can drain more than it can inspire, and that the energy she gives away carelessly can never return the way she hopes. So she chooses silence, not as a punishment, but as a shield that protects her peace, her joy, and her spirit. In the absence of voices around her, she begins to hear the most important voice of all her own. She starts noticing the rhythm of her days, the small joys that go unnoticed when life is loud. She drinks her tea without distraction, listens to the sound of rain, reads words that resonate with her heart, and walks through the world without seeking validation. In these quiet moments, she learns patience. She learns discernment. She learns that life does not need to be measured by the number of people in it, but by the depth of understanding, love, and kindness it allows her to feel. This solitude is not emptiness, it is growth. It is a time when she can rebuild herself without interruptions, when she can understand her strengths without comparison, and when she can forgive past hurts without needing anyone's acknowledgement. She understands that loneliness hurts only when the soul is empty, but solitude nourishes when the soul is full. And so, when people look at her and whisper judgments, she smiles quietly, knowing they do not see the work being done inside her. They do not see the courage it takes to stand alone in a world that prizes popularity over peace. They do not see the wisdom in choosing quality over quantity, depth over surface, sincerity over convenience. Sometimes, even in her quiet, she feels longing. But this longing is not weakness. It is the reminder that she is human. And yet, she chooses to honor it, not run from it, for she has learned that real strength comes from acknowledging her emotions without letting them control her. She does not chase empty companionship. She does not settle for distraction in place of connection. She waits patiently, trusting that when the right people enter her life, they will meet someone whole, someone steady, someone whose love is genuine because it is freely given, not demanded. So remember, a woman with no friends is not a woman who is lost. She is a woman who has chosen herself first, who has built resilience in silence, and who walks through life with a quiet power that no crowd can ever take away. Solitude, when embraced with awareness, becomes not a prison but a temple, a place where she becomes her own companion, her own teacher, and her own sanctuary. Being alone is often misunderstood. People see a woman without friends and immediately imagine emptiness, sadness, or failure. But solitude is not always a sign of loss. Sometimes it is a sign of wisdom. Sometimes it is a sign that she has finally learned the art of choosing her company wisely, the art of protecting her heart from unnecessary hurt, and the art of being content with herself. She has walked through seasons of people leaving, of promises broken, of laughter shared but never understood. She has trusted, given, and forgave more than anyone should. And in doing so, she discovered something profound. Not everyone who is around you wants to see you flourish. Some want your energy, some want your attention, some want your kindness, but not your growth. And when you realize this, something inside you quietly shifts. You begin to step back. You begin to protect your peace. You begin to embrace solitude not as punishment, but as healing. In this space, she starts to notice life differently. She hears the small things, the rustle of leaves in the morning, the warmth of sunlight on her face, the subtle rhythms of her own breathing. In the past, these moments were drowned in noise. Noise of opinions, noise of obligations, noise of people who never truly cared. Now, in the absence of others' demands, she finds clarity. She begins to see herself without judgment. She begins to understand her strengths and weaknesses without comparison. She learns patience, resilience, and quiet confidence. People often mistake her calm for coldness. They label her distant or unapproachable. They fail to see the courage it takes to stand alone in a world that prizes crowds over character. They do not notice that her silence is not emptiness but strength, that her boundaries are not walls but careful choices, that her solitude is not loneliness but freedom. She is not running from the world, she is simply running toward herself. Yes, there are days when loneliness visits. There are evenings when she feels the sting of longing for companionship. But she no longer fears it, no longer pleads for it, and no longer allows it to dictate her self-worth. She has learned that love and friendship cannot be forced. They come naturally, only when the timing is right, only when the people are real, only when the connection is mutual. Until then, she chooses to enjoy her own presence, to cultivate her own inner peace, and to nurture the parts of herself that others once ignored. Over time, this woman becomes quiet, steady, and deeply present. She does not seek validation from the wrong people. She does not compromise her values for acceptance. She understands that a small circle of genuine people is far more precious than a large circle of acquaintances. And when the right souls enter her life, she welcomes them with joy, not because she was empty before, but because she is full now, full of wisdom, full of love, full of self-respect. A woman with no friends is not incomplete. She is learning to become whole, to walk through life with dignity, to honor herself above the expectations of others, and to carry a quiet power that no number of voices could ever give her. In choosing herself, she discovers freedom, peace, and ultimately, true companionship. There is a profound difference between being alone and feeling lonely, yet most people confuse the two. A woman with no friends is often seen through the lens of absence, as if her life is missing something essential. But solitude, when embraced consciously, is not a gap, it is a gift. It is an opportunity to slow down, to observe oneself, and to cultivate a life that is aligned with inner values rather than outer expectations. She has been through seasons where her kindness was misunderstood, her generosity exploited, and her trust betrayed. For a long time, she believed that being available to everyone, adjusting to everyone's needs, and forgiving repeatedly would create lasting bonds. But life, in its gentle way, showed her that not every hand extended is meant to hold yours. Some are there to take, some to judge, and some simply to pass through. And so she learned the subtle art of detachment, not detachment from life, but detachment from people who could not honor her presence. In her solitude, she begins to hear the quiet wisdom that was always inside her, but often drowned out by the noise of others. She notices the rhythm of her days, the simple beauty in routine, and the calm that comes from living without constant approval. She learns to enjoy her own company, to laugh freely without an audience, to cry without shame, and to dream without limitation. These are not small victories, they are the building blocks of emotional resilience. People may look at her and think she is isolated or lonely. They may feel pity or try to fix her by offering advice or companionship that is more about filling their own emptiness than supporting her growth. But she has learned to discern. She understands that peace is more valuable than popularity, and that self-respect is more nourishing than approval. She knows that a small circle of genuine people is worth more than a crowd of superficial voices. There are times when she feels a gentle ache of longing, a whisper that reminds her of the warmth of connection. But she does not chase it recklessly. She allows it to exist as a natural human feeling, without letting it dictate her choices or compromise her dignity. She has discovered that real companionship cannot be forced. It comes when two hearts meet in mutual respect, understanding and care, not when one seeks it desperately to fill a void. Through this journey, she becomes quietly strong. Her strength is subtle, not loud. It is in the calm of her thoughts, the steadiness of her actions, and the clarity of her choices. She does not need constant validation, nor does she feel the urge to explain herself to everyone. She moves through life with dignity, grace, and awareness, understanding that being alone does not diminish her worth. It enhances it, and when the right people enter her life, they find a woman who is complete in herself, whose love is genuine, because it is not given from need, but from abundance. A woman with no friends is not a woman who is lacking. She is a woman who has learned the value of solitude, the power of self-awareness, and the quiet strength of walking her own path with integrity. A woman with no friends is often seen as someone incomplete, someone who needs to fix herself or search desperately for companionship. But the truth is far more profound. She is often the one who has listened too much, given too much, and loved too much. She has poured her energy into relationships that were one-sided, walked the extra mile for people who never noticed, and trusted those who were not ready to be trustworthy. And through all of this, she has learned one of life's most important lessons. It is better to be alone than to be with the wrong people. She begins to understand that being surrounded by voices does not guarantee connection. Many are loud, many are present physically, but few resonate with the heart. She realizes that some relationships drain instead of nourish, and that filling her life with people who do not honor her presence is like watering a garden with salt water. It looks full for a while, but nothing grows. And so she makes the courageous choice to step back, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. In her solitude, she begins to hear herself clearly for the first time. She notices her thoughts, her feelings, and her dreams without distraction. She learns to sit with her own heart without fear, to enjoy her own laughter without seeking approval, and to face her own fears without running. This is not weakness. It is strength, the kind of strength that is quiet but unwavering, gentle but unshakable. She becomes her own companion, her own source of comfort, and her own teacher. People may judge her, saying she is distant, cold, or unapproachable. They may fail to see the courage it takes to protect one's inner peace in a world that constantly demands attention. They do not notice that her silence is not emptiness but clarity, her boundaries are not walls but respect for herself, and her solitude is not loneliness but freedom. She walks through life not looking for validation, not seeking approval, and not begging for inclusion. She walks with dignity, patience, and awareness, understanding that not every connection is meant to stay. Even in solitude, there are moments of longing. Even in silence, there are times when the heart wishes for companionship. But she has learned that the right relationships will come naturally, not through desperation. She waits patiently, knowing that when genuine souls enter her life, they will find someone whole, not someone incomplete. She waits for depth rather than quantity, for sincerity rather than convenience, and for loyalty rather than superficiality. In this way, a woman with no friends is not someone lacking. She is someone who has cultivated strength, wisdom, and self-respect. She has learned to navigate life with calmness, clarity, and courage. And when the right people finally enter her life, they meet not a woman who needed them, but a woman who chose them. And that choice comes from abundance, not need. Her journey through solitude transforms her. It is not emptiness that defines her, but quiet power, resilience, and the grace of knowing her own worth. So remember, some women are not alone because they were rejected. They are alone because they finally learned what they deserve. And that is not weakness. That is quiet power.